Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so sorry for my voice. I've had 2 weeks of nonstop cold. So I don't know how many recordings we're going to have with my voice sounding like this, but maybe it's sexy. Yeah, right. That's what we're going to go with. I am with Dr. Jen again today. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Jen.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be back.
Well, we originally talked about Chinese medicine and all like a very broad kind of introduction to what it is and the principles behind it. And after that initial recording, we talked about how important poop is. And I did articulate that effectively, poop. So we all know everyone poops, but we're bringing you back in to talk about the scoop on poop. So before we even dive into anything, I do want to make a quick disclaimer. And Jen, you can pop in with more information if you want. But basically, if you are in an emergency situation, if you are in pain, if your child is in pain, please don't just listen here. Please seek medical attention. No matter what happens, always seek medical attention. So is anything else you want to add there, Jen?
That
okay,
perfect.
It checks the box for us. Okay, well, let's go ahead. So the scoop on poop. Why, from a Chinese medicine perspective, is poop so important, and what does it really tell us?
I mean, it's a great question. And besides it being a fun word to say, as grownups, it's often something we don't even give much thought to unless or until there's a problem, right? If you're not having constipation, if you're not having abdominal pain or cramping or diarrhea, we're busy in our daily lives, and it's just something that happens automatically, hopefully, for most of us. Not true for everybody.
For most people. I mean, like I poop once a day.
Right. Then, yeah, me too. Knock on wood. That's a great way to be. It helps tremendously with health. And that's the thing. But when things go wrong, it becomes a focus. And we often end up at a doctor's office or taking over-the-counter medication to try to get it to happen more, get it to happen less, deal with the pain involved. With kids, they can't always tell us what's going on, right? Digestion is such a complex process in our body. It's complex physical and energetic processes overlapping from our mouth through our anus. And there's so many ways that can change. And yet digestion is so crucial to so many things. Well, immunity. Digestion is a big part of our immune system. That's been known in Chinese medicine for thousands of years. And that's something Western medicine is through research coming around to from their perspective as well. Oh, wow, this plays a big role in our immune response and our health and well-being. Absorption of nutrients and fluids. This is why it's so crucial. This is how we live. And it cleans or rids our body of impurities and waste. Urine and sweat being the other primary ways, but really pooping. That keeps us clean on the inside. So it's really important, not just in Western medicine, but in Chinese medicine. And for kids, we look at bowel movements or pooping as a really important way that our bodies communicate, regardless of age, but particularly for kids, because they can't always tell us what's going on inside.
And especially not even just little kids, but I mean, my 7-year-old isn't communicating quite yet. She certainly can't tell me my stomach hurts because I have gas pain. Like she can't say that to me. So it's not even just infants. I know we definitely, I mean, man, when kids are born, infants, all you talk about is poop. Did she poop today? Did she poop today? How is the poop? What did it look like? What's the consistency? All of that stuff. Well, guess what? As a 7-year-old, I'm still celebrating poop. What are some of the things that we should look for? Like, let's start with a little one, but then let's also go up to a child that's nonverbal who might be 7 or 10, kind of looking at that progression of a bowel movement and what it tells us.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, right? That's exactly just what you said. Like kids in the NICU, kids with special needs, kids with developmental changes that still need to happen, right? Those kids, they can't communicate verbally, but we all can communicate, especially them, in ways that aren't verbal. And poop is a great way to track, incredibly great way to track. And in Chinese medicine, we don't just look at children as little adults. In Chinese medicine, they have different physiology, especially regarding their energetics and their development. Of course, we see Western medicine physiology also and recognize that and work with that. But for little kids, for little ones, their channel, especially infants, their channels or meridians aren't developed yet. As a grown-up, you go and you get acupuncture, you get body work called tuina, and that's going to be different for a child. Especially an infant. Their immune system is still developing, right? So we look at energy and we look at different ways to approach working with children than we would adults. When it comes to what we look for, in addition to energetic shifts, you and I talked about, well, we want to share things that parents can use at home, right? And I mean, like you said, with Teal, like poop every day is a big deal. Looking at it, make sure it's happening. And so we want to look for a few things. One, is it happening or is it not happening? Two, are they seeming to be in pain? Does their body tense up or do they strain a lot? Three, color. Color is a big one. And we'll get into that a little bit. Texture, consistency of it, odor, right? I mean, we know odor can be really strong, but it can also have oddly no odor. And that tells us something too. And then we want to listen for sounds. Not only is their cry changing, right? Is it a soft, weak cry? Is it a really strong kind of angry cry? That tells us something in Chinese medicine about the energetics, whether it's what we would say deficiency or an excess condition, too much of something or too little of something. That kind of tells us how to go about working to help them.
Okay, so just to confirm, that isn't just when they're pooping, but just in general, paying attention to a child's cry in general helps you look at their energy level, which then would influence how you would perhaps look at their poop. Is it happening? The pain, the color, the texture, the odor, etc.
Yes, and look at their overall, we would say, condition, right? Or their Chinese medicine diagnosis, which would be different than a Western medical diagnosis. And so we're not asking parents at home to quote, diagnose their child, right? These are just indicators that they can use. We're going to go over a couple of techniques that they can do at home, and this would give a sense of which way or how to apply those techniques at home.
Is there anything else that we should be looking at? So is it happening, the pain or experience of it, color, texture, consistency, odor, and then sounds? Is there anything else we should be looking for?
Yeah. How much are they eating? I mean, that's something else parents look at all the time, right? How much is your little one eating?
Absolutely.
From even with breastfeeding in the very early days, all the way up through teenagers and into college. Are they still eating when they go to college, right?
Well, and what are they eating?
And what are they eating? Absolutely.
You have so many little kids that just eat the white foods, rice and bread and pasta and crackers. And that leads to constipation, period. Not just if they're eating, but what they're eating.
Yeah. And one last thing is, and you know this, feeling their abdomen, feeling their belly. What's going on? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it hot? Is it cold? Those things also are indicators that there's something amiss in their belly, in their digestive tract, and with pooping.
Let's go through these. Are you okay if we quickly go through these? And we don't have to get into a huge,
Absolutely.
long diatribe, but a healthy system happening. So I've heard that you're supposed to poop every time after you eat. I'm like, I've heard that. I'm like, dude, that doesn't happen for me. I poop once a day. And it's usually pretty easy. It's not usually a tricky process for me. But for children, what would we be looking at? Once a day, maybe once every other day? What's healthy? And I know you're giving generalizations.
Right. And there's a range. There's a range for adults. There's a range for kids. And it's being within a healthy range that's important. I have had adult patients come to me and say, oh, no, my digestive system's great. Oh, great. How often do you poop? What's the frequency? Oh, every 4 or 5 days. Not healthy.
Oh, my God.
No, not
the
healthy.
amount, my stomach would hurt so bad. And I know that when I don't poop, I actually feel almost nauseous. And that's the toxins, right? That's totally the toxins getting into my system.
Getting backed up.
Yes.
Your digestive system is just not moving. So for kids,
what?
Though, It varies. As infants, they're going to poop multiple times a day, hopefully, ideally, in a perfect world. Now, we know this doesn't always happen. There can be reasons for that, everything from structural malformations in their gut when they're born, in their colon or their small intestine, all the way through just not being able to nurse, or some kids develop allergies even to breast milk. Medications would be another one. I mean, there can be a wide range of reasons we might see changes.
So I want us to focus on kids, just because I know we could talk about this for hours. So is it like once a day, maybe once every other day, kind of the range?
For infants, it's several times a day. As little ones age, it slows down. I think even if you have a toddler that's pooping once a day, that's great.
Okay.
If they're pooping a couple times a day, that's great. If they're going 4 or 5 or 6 times a day, if it's becoming disruptive, once they start with solid foods, then that's a sign that it's too much. And, you may want to get checked with the pediatrician. But there are things, again, that we're going to go over briefly that you could try to do at home, or a pediatrician says it's fine, but you as their parent feel like, this isn't really, I'm not feeling this. This feels like a little much or a little too little to me. Then you take them to a Chinese medicine practitioner, an acupuncturist who specializes in working with kids or is experienced with working with kids.
Following your intuition. That's really kind of what I just heard there is if you've got that nudge, if one of your clairs is going off, like it's time to follow your intuition and go with it. I never want to look back. And I have before looked back and said, man, I knew that and I should have acted on it. Teal's going to love this when she's 18 and she listens to this. She has poop face. Like I know, like, oh, we've got a poop coming. Like her concentration shifts. She doesn't necessarily have hard poops, but she just has a shift. And so she's not in pain, but I do know that her body is saying, okay, hold on. I got to focus to get this out of me. That's okay. Correct. Poop face is fine.
It is okay. Poop face is fine.
But not pain or straining.
Poop face is fine and good, frankly, because again, she can't verbalize what's happening or what's going to happen for her. Hey, mom, I need to go. Right. But not yet.
Correct.
But she is communicating that to you through her body.
So we're looking for no real strain. There might be an effort to get a poop out, but no like straining, really intense muscle straining.
That's right. Muscle contraction, red face, crying, especially earlier on, well, at any point, crying with pooping, not a good sign, right? Even if they can't verbalize.
Okay. Color. Now, I know this depends a lot on what you're eating. Like babies' poop is orangey puke color. It's because of that breast milk. Yep. But then it does change as food starts getting into the system. So I'm assuming you don't want like dark poop, but you also don't want really light brown poop. What are you looking for?
Again, there's a range, and you're absolutely right about like the breast milk poop is really identifiable, right? And that is normal. We like to see that color, and we like to see lots of it. We like to see it soft. We'll get into consistency in a minute, but yes, like a yellow or brown, a yellowish green, brownish green, that's all okay. That's great. What we get concerned with, if it gets really dark green, that's actually still okay, but you may want to hold it up to the light and look to make sure it's not black, that you actually do see green. If it's black, that's something you want to be concerned with and get to a doctor right away, because that's an indication of old blood in the GI system.
Yeah.
So that's really important to catch immediately. Obviously, if there's fresh blood, also for little kids, for adults, that can be hemorrhoids. But for a baby with fresh blood, get them to their doctor right away.
Okay.
If it's black, get them to the doctor right away. If it's white, get them to the doctor right away.
What would white mean?
That's usually a severe liver condition, one of several that relate to, and then the bile isn't actually being processed and cleared, and part of that and used in the digestive process. So the stool becomes white, and that can be an emergency situation.
All right. Texture, consistency. Obviously, we don't want it flying out like water. I mean, when they're a baby, it's different. Let's talk consistency.
So yeah, we look for it to be soft, even runny, but not watery, like you say, or pasty, especially when they're newborns, you get that kind of pastiness to it or that runniness to it. And that really ideally, even up until they start solid foods. When they start solid foods, it's going to get a little more firm. And that's where you don't want to get too hard either. So you don't want like the little balls of poop, especially in, a little one where they can't necessarily, some kids don't like to drink. And it's a challenge to get them. Like you try every sippy cup on the planet to find one they like. And looking at their poop for those hard balls once they start with solid foods is a sign of dehydration.
Like little rabbit pellets, like kind of like little pellets. You don't want that. That's a sign of dehydration. So you want a longish kind of poop, like not long, but like a little log, but not like little like little things that are coming out, because that's hard. Okay. Do you like that? Everyone's like, dude, Jen, you did not need to add the sound effects. Okay.
Hey, it's about poop. We gotta.
I know. Sound effect in there somewhere. I know. I should probably put some sound effects in. Now, odor. I know that my poop smells way different than Teal's poop.
Yes.
So let's talk smell.
And it depends in part on. Let's talk smell. There should be some mild odor, right? There should be, especially once kids start with solid food. Again, when they're breastfeeding or on formula as little ones, the odor won't be as strong. It's usually a little on the sour side, and that's normal. What we don't want is it to get sulfury or too sour, like, wow. And we also don't want it to smell sweet. Also a sign of emergency, and you want to get them to the doctor right away.
So sulfur, sweet, or really sour. Those are not good things. Okay.
Not good things, but really sour isn't an emergency. Sulfur isn't an emergency. Sweet is. And no odor. That's not an emergency either, but it's notable that is an indication to us that energetically their digestive system isn't really functioning. It's what we would say is a sign of deficiency. There should be a slight odor.
Now, I'm just going to be honest. It does depend on how big. So Teal has some big poops. I mean, I am like, holy God. And every day we have big poops. Like, geez Louise, child, that's like an adult sized poop down there. And she's always so proud of herself. Like, we look at the poop together, we flush it, we say bye. It's a big deal for, we try not now in public to talk about her poop, because I think she's at the age where we don't need to be doing that. Like, I don't walk up to Alex like, hey, did she poop today, in front of her friends? Because that would be embarrassing for any child. So sometimes if it's a smaller poop, I don't really smell a ton. And I'll be like, oh, you pooped in there. That's okay. It's like,
that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And good for Teal.
That
means my guess is you're feeding her a lot of vegetables, a lot of fiber.
Yes, she had. Well, we are very lucky. We started when she was really young. I made all of her baby food. I just took our leftovers, threw it into the Vitamix from dinner, added a little broth, and boom. So she knew what steak tastes like, and peppers and garlic and onion and broccoli and all of that stuff when she was really little. So now her palate is very, very good. Her palate's actually better than mine. She eats things that I would never eat. Pate, foie gras, disgusting. All right. I try not to vomit. It's such good brain food. Like the pate and foie gras, like it is good brain food for her. So
it's good for your liver too, by the way.
That's good for liver. That's good to know. We encourage that. All right. Sounds. Pop, pop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. We used to sing that all the time. Sounds. What are we looking for?
Sounds. Again, so sounds, there's two areas that you may want to pay attention to. You want to listen to, again, we talked about the cry. Is it loud and angry and hard and piercing? Is it soft and weak? And that's not just with bowel movements, as you asked earlier. It's around that, like if there is something you're noticing is off with their digestive system and their bowel movement frequency, pooping frequency, they're going to be uncomfortable. They're going to be showing you, just like with a cold, it's not just at certain times, right? It's all day long. It's all night long.
Right.
And that is going to tell you, is this what we call an excess condition or a deficiency condition? And we'll talk about the technique coming up here. Parents can do at home. That's going to say how hard or how soft do they go when they're doing the technique.
So does that go
firmly? We never go hard.
No, never go hard. Exactly. Firm or soft. So does that kind of lead us into like feeling the belly? Like when you talked about it being hot or cold, and then that moves into, okay, now we have some hand movements that we can talk about. Let's go there.
Absolutely. You place your hand on the baby's belly, you're going to kind of feel all over. And you want to feel again, is their abdomen warm? Is it cold? And then is there any firmness or hardness with their abdomen? And if there is that firmness throughout, or is it just one area? You can feel like their large intestine, right? The colon, and that comes up the right side of the belly, comes across just below their ribs pretty much and diaphragm, and then it comes down the left side. And that is important when we do we'll call it massage. It's Toi Na that we're going to talk about. And so you're going to kind of make that shape of going up one side of their abdomen, across, and then down the other side.
Because that's how the bowel is moving the poop.
That's the direction.
You want to go with the direction and not against it.
Well, that depends.
Oh, okay.
That's going to depend. So we'll talk about that.
So what you were saying is it's up the right side, across to the left, and then down the left side. That's what you're talking about. I just want to reiterate that.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the shape of the colon, which is what we'll mostly be working with. And then the small intestine is more in the middle of the belly and surrounded by the large intestine. So you want to feel for hardness in that area, up the right side, across just below the diaphragm and ribs, and down the left side of the belly. And if you feel any hardness in there, then there could actually be some impacted stool. And we know with kids with malformations, kids with genetic conditions, kids born with difficulties with bowel movements or digestion in general, that's a common thing we run into, is the colon may not be the muscles may not be strong enough to move poop through or stool through quickly or well.
With certain conditions, the muscle tone, so hypertonia or hypertonic children, those muscles are constricted. So could that actually lead to more constipation?
Yes, absolutely.
All of that is muscle. And so it could squeeze it, and so that it's harder to move it out.
Right. Because if the stool gets to be too big, and that's where a lot of parents will go to just liquefying all their meals in the hopes that everything stays so soft, it'll just run more easily instead of relying on muscle contraction, which is what as grown-ups, if we have a quote normal or relatively normal functioning bowel, it's peristalsis, or the muscles contracting and relaxing to move stool through our colon and then out rectum.
Let's talk about what are the movements now? So we feel that it's cold and hard. Is that going to lead us to doing a certain movement, or talk me through that?
Yes. So there's a couple of techniques we could do. So I'm going to talk about one for sure with the belly, and then one with their tailbone on their low back. And if we have time for both of those today, if not, we'll do it another time, or maybe a little class for parents or something.
Yeah, we can certainly do a class. That'd be fun.
So circling the abdomen, we'll call it. So what you're going to do is you gently, think about your baby and like how you softly rub to just connect with them. It's kind of like if they're hurt, they fall and they skin their knee or something, and you just, as a mom or dad, you just gently put your hand on their knee and you just rub it. Super gentle, right? That caring. That's also treating. We all have this innate ability to treat.
Energy in our hands.
Energy in our hands. And we're going to use that same energy for their belly. Their belly's hurting. So you're just going to place your hand on their belly. And it doesn't matter where you start exactly, but for the sake of this, we'll start at the lower right corner of their abdomen,
of
right?
Their abdomen. Belly. So your left. Yeah. If you're facing them, it's your left. So they're right.
Yeah. Let's say when you're feeling around their belly and you find a hard spot, then you're going to work with that first. And so you're going to just put your hand over that spot where the hardness is, and you're going to put your other hand behind their low back, and you're just going to kind of hold there. It sounds woo-woo. You're going to set intention for that to move. And that is how we would do it in craniosacral therapy. And that's how we would do it in Chinese medicine, also with gentle Toi Na, which is the Chinese medicine body work. And you just hold there for a little bit. And it seems like, okay, this is a hard thing. It should move. And I'm being really soft. You want to be as gentle and light as possible, but really connect with their tissues and just be there and set that intention for that hardness to start to soften or to move. and see if things change in your baby's face, in their body. Are they tense? Is that lessening, that tension lessening? Is the coldness getting less cold or warming up?
So how long might you hold that? Maybe 10 minutes or even 5 minutes?
Even 3 minutes,
Even
even
3.
2 minutes.
All right,
But
great.
if you feel like a little longer is better, do longer. Sure, you can do 10 minutes. That would be amazing. The cool thing about kids is they're really very young. They are using a lot of young energy because they're growing the fastest they're ever going to grow in their life in, let's say, the first 2 to 3 years, not to mention in the womb. So they're very young, which means when you work with them, when you treat them, they change very quickly.
Wonderful.
So you hold first, then we're going to circle the abdomen. So if there's a stuckness, if there's constipation, if there's a hardness in the abdomen, like there might be a blockage, as long as it's not a full, if it's a full blockage, that's an emergency situation. You need to go to the doctor, urgent care, ER right away. If it's not an emergency situation, but there is some hardness in there, it's not moving everything out, then you're going to want to put your palm on that lower right corner that we talked about of their belly. And you're going to work just gently without any pressure. Move up the right side, following what we call the ascending colon. You're going to work up the right side. You're going to just gently bring your hand across their belly, just under their ribs, and then down the left side of their abdomen. And then you're going to come back across to the right and repeat that circle. You're going to do that. Now, this is the thing that gets parents a lot. We're going to repeat that circle 300 to 500 times.
What? 300 to 500 times.
Yeah.
Now you're not pushing hard.
Not at all.
Whoa. They would need to be asleep maybe, or watching a show or
distracted. But you'll find that a lot of times if they're uncomfortable, they're not pooping and their belly's full and this is an excess condition, right? And they may be a little wriggly and, just restless, uncomfortable. You start doing this, and just like when you're putting them to sleep and you're gently rubbing their back and rocking, they often will just calm right down. This actually is relieving and helps them.
Wow. 300 to 500 times. Okay, peeps. Hope you know your numbers.
Now you can start with 100 and see where it goes. And if they're just not feeling it, then maybe you try something else. But start with 100 and then work your way up. Maybe you get 100 in at one time and then they need a little break, or you need a little break, and then you do 200 the next in an hour or half an hour. And this is the younger they are. As they get closer, maybe they're 6 or 7. Like for Teal, you wouldn't have to do that much. You wouldn't want to do that much. You would maybe do 100 to 200 times, and that would be sufficient. Now, again, this is because there's constipation or because there's a partial blockage. The stool isn't moving through. Their poops are incomplete, right? They're kind of little balls, pellets, or they're pieces. Then things aren't complete with each bowel movement. So you're just going that direction to encourage peristalsis, to encourage the chi to flow through the large intestine the way it's supposed to. Now if we want to put on the brakes.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Whoa, we've got fluid coming out. What do we do?
Okay. So if it's the other way, there's too much coming out all the time. It's runny, it's smelly, they can't control it. They're maybe going to get dehydrated, they're sick, whatever's causing. You want to look at what the root issues might be, right? Do they have an infection? Is it medication? Is it a food allergy? But to slow that pouring out of the bowels, right?
Yeah.
The diarrhea, yes. or very soft and frequent stools, you go the opposite direction. You do the same thing very softly, you just go the opposite direction. So you would start on the lower left side of their belly and work up the left side, across from left to right, just below their ribs, and then down the right side of their belly. And that's the reverse of peristalsis. That's just going to slow the clock. If you look at their abdomen as a clock, if for constipation, you're going to go clockwise. For diarrhea, you're going to go counterclockwise.
Fascinating. I do use an oil from doTERRA called Tummy Tamer. It's a kid's version. I always let Teal smell it before because she'll tell me if she wants it or not. I use that on her where I know she's got a tummy ache and I'll slowly rub it in that way. I don't do it 100 times or 300 times. What are your thoughts on that? Is it okay to add something like that or even just a warm oil? I know sometimes I put a heating pad on her tummy, just really, really light, or a warm water bottle just to ease some of that, or even a warm bath just to kind of relax those muscles and then start moving. Is that you would recommend that? You're shaking your head. I'm assuming we're okay.
I would do the oil after. I think it's great. I think everything you can do to help your little one have good bowel movements that aren't too hard, aren't too soft, aren't too runny, aren't too dry. The better we can poop every day, the more healthy we are. I think it's great. Absolutely. Just do the oil after.
Now, why is that?
For Toyna, pediatric Toyna, you're going to do this with their clothes on. You're not going to rub their belly bare. You can do it through their clothes.
So that's good to know. We didn't say that. Clothes can be completely on.
Absolutely. And so you don't want the oil to interfere with the motion in any way, right? Because this is energetic. So you're being very gentle. You are touching and you want to make good contact and connection with your little one, but you also want to be very light and just follow, setting that intention and really feeling that you're connecting not just with the muscles of their abdomen, but also with the colon. Sink your energy in to that level.
Set that intention to the cellular.
Yes. Yes. And then you can apply the oil after. And same thing, if their belly's cold, a warm water bottle is great. A warm bath is great. If they're hot, their abdomen is hot, then you wouldn't want to apply that. You'd be adding heat. That could be infection. There could be a lot of things in Chinese medicine that would be generating that heat, but you don't want to add fire to fire.
Would you do anything cooling in that instance?
You could, and that's where I would probably go to an oil. In Chinese medicine, we don't like ice or like to apply ice or cold for most anything. And the reason being is that it creates more what we call stagnation or stuckness, more tightness, right? If you think about if you're out in the cold, up in Tahoe, you walk out on a really cold day and you don't have your jacket on and all your muscles contract right away. That happens when we put an ice pack on. People do that for migraines and it kind of drives the migraine in. So it makes it a more frequent and recurrent process of those muscles contracting. So we never want to apply cold in Chinese medicine, but we might apply a cooling oil like a peppermint oil, a white flower oil.
Lovely.
You probably have a good doTERRA oil.
Yeah, but you recommend also, I think white lotus you recommend?
Snow lotus.
Snow lotus, thank you. Yeah. And then there's another one with a mountain name. I think you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. Mountain rose.
Okay. So those are also some really lovely oils. Less well known than doTERRA and Young Living. Again, as long as it's a high quality oil, high quality, no synthetics. There you go. This has been really, really amazing information. I know we could go into a lot more, but I do want to keep this one short. We have talked about possibly having you come on and do like a live Zoom or a live Facebook call for parents. That would be amazing if you're open to doing that. Are there any last tidbits of information that you'd like to share with us before we sign off?
It all comes back to trusting your intuition. Trust your gut about their gut. Parents, no. Parents just instinctively know it. And so any parent that brings their little one to me, that's the first thing I'm going to ask. What do you think is going on? What do you notice that's off? Because if the little one can't show me directly and can't communicate verbally, parents know. So always trust you guys.
That's hilarious.
But
pun intended.
Also
pun intended.
Pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
If you have questions or if the idea of this approach to working with kids, with your little one who has issues with bowel movements, whether it's constipation or diarrhea or some combination, or whether they're developing something that could later be IBS or Crohn's or something like that. There are alternatives. I'm not saying don't see your doctor, don't see your pediatrician. You absolutely see your pediatrician, but consider finding a local Chinese medicine doctor and or craniosacral therapist who can work with your little one on a regular basis. I've seen kids start out struggling, and with the right support for the parents and the little one, it can make a real big difference and keep them from having to go on medications, having to have surgeries.
It's a big deal. I know that when Teal hasn't pooped in a couple of days. One, that's very not normal for her, but it is something where we are very on it and we look at, okay, we need to adjust her foods for the next day or two. I know she's super sensitive to coconut milk, coconut water. Man, that makes her poop. Watermelon juice, woo, that makes her poop. We do know certain things like that. And I think, again, follow your intuition, pay attention. I remember the first time we figured out that coconut water was giving her diarrhea. I was like, holy God, what is going on? We shifted something. Like, it was very clear that we had done something. And so following your intuition, stepping back and really looking at what are the building blocks that got us here? What did we change in our behaviors with her, or what behaviors did she change? I know that when a child is sick or has a cold, they're not moving around as much. When a child moves around more, they poop more. Typically, I'm making very non-medical generalized judgments here, but I know that when Teal started walking more, we started seeing a change in her poop. All of that stuff really does impact it. But I love where you gave us the things to look for immediately, and then 2 very simple things that we can do with the hand placement and then the movements. Such good information, Dr. Jen. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate being on and getting to share a little bit with parents and with kids. So hopefully they get to listen to this too. It's good to talk about it and not have poop be something that's taboo to discuss, except maybe in front of Teal's friends.
Right.
At age 7.
Actually, that was something that happened down in the Dolphins. You know how we do all of the morning roundtable? And one of the girls that was there was, I think, 23 years old. She was nonverbal. And her parents were talking for her. And they immediately talked about poop and her pooping. And Alex and I talked later and we said, I wonder how uncomfortable she was that her parents were talking about her bowel movements in front of everybody. And so that's something that's really important for us, that we will talk about it, and we'll talk about it with her babysitters or her grandparents, but we don't talk about it in front of her friends. We don't talk about it in public. Or if we do, it's like, hey, did you get that? Yeah, okay, good. Mission accomplished. We don't need to give it verbiage. We don't need to actually say the words. So I think it is important that we know everyone poops, but it also is really important to have respect for the little human being that we're talking about in front of. And so if I am going to talk about it in front of a doctor or something, I will say, Teal, we're going to go ahead and talk about your poop now. I really acknowledge it with her.
That's a great way to do it. Absolutely. And then as adults, I'll be in grocery stores or whatever, I'll see patients will come up and they'll just start talking about the poop right in front of, but they're giving themselves permission, right? So yeah, it's always good to get permission.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you for giving us permission to talk openly about the scoop on poop. We'll definitely have you back, Jen. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found 1 or 2 meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.